Let's make some cool hologram materials and voice activated holograms in Blender. Add a new material for your object and remove the principal BSDF. Add an emission node and connect it to the surface. Switch to cycles and GPU compute. Add a mix node, plug in a noise texture to the A and a wave texture to the B input. If you have Node Wrangler enabled, Ctrl-Shift-click on the mix node to preview it. Change the wave type to sine and you can increase the scale and also adjust the mix factor. Change the mix type to multiply. Now plug this mix node into the color of the emission and emission into the surface of the material. Add a mix shader and connect it after the emission node and plug in a transparent BSDF to the second shader. You can increase the second mix factor to make it more transparent. Change the color of the transparent BSDF if you want and play around with the settings of the noise texture and the wave texture to finalize the look. You can increase the strength of the emission, or you can add a math node and set it to multiply and plug it in after the first mix node. Now you can change the value to control the emission strength and the blend with the scan lines. Move to the beginning of the timeline with shift and left arrow and set a keyframe by pressing I on the value of the multiply. Add another keyframe at the end of your timeline. Now switch to the graph editor. Select the material property and add a modifier to it. I added a noise modifier. And you can adjust the scale, strength, offset phase, etc. Switch to the render view to see the effects. This creates a nice flickering hologram if you want to show a bad connection or something like that. Play around with the settings of the noise modifier until you are satisfied with the effect that you want. Another way of animating it is to add a sine node and a value node. In the value, type #frame by n. The larger n is, the slower your animation will be, and the other way around. Now plug this in into the sine, connect it to a multiply node, and plug it in into the strength of the emission. This will give you a periodically glowing holographic effect. You can change the n number to make it faster or slower. This is the base of a very basic hologram material. We're going to add things to it now. Now you can always add a wireframe modifier on this to make it look cool, or we can configure that in the shader itself. We'll get to that after this next section. Let's make some cool animated holograms. Add a plane and subdivide it a bunch. Put on our hologram material on it. Now add a displacement node and a noise texture, or you can choose any other texture like Voronoi. Now plug the displacement into the displacement of the material and go to the material settings and make it displacement plus bump. You can adjust the scale or even subdivide the plane a bit if the texture is not clear. Adjust the scale of the displacement to your liking. You can also play around with the noise texture settings. Change the noise type to 4D. That gives us a W slider which helps us animate this. I just keyframed the W value slightly and that gave me some quite interesting results. Now you can also add a wireframe modifier on it to make it look cooler. Adjust the scale of the noise and the speed of the W change to get some really wacky holographic effects. Play around with the settings and create the looks that you want. I'm also going to show you a few different types of hologram materials that you can use. First one uses a checker texture plugged into the emission color and mixed with a transparent BSDF. You can see the node setup below and use it in your scenes. The next one is a wireframe. Instead of using the wireframe modifier, I just plugged in the wireframe node into the emission color and that gives us the wireframe effect without taxing our system. You can pause the video and check out these node setups. The next one is the Scanlines effect, which is also animated. So it has these following nodes which is also animated with a value driver. Just copy the node setup and adjust the settings until you get something you like. The #frame by number is a very useful driver that I use all the time to change the values randomly. And this gives us a cool Scanlines effect. The number you're dividing the frame value by decides how fast or slow your animation goes. So you can adjust that to your liking. A lower number gives us a fast animation and a higher number gives us a slow animation because we are dividing the frame value. Try these materials for your projects. And next I thought of experimenting with a voice activated hologram. I added a UV sphere, scaled it up and placed it in my scene. Add a subdivide modifier, increase the levels to 2 and apply it. also shaded smooth. I started with the base hologram material that we made, added another mix shader after the first mix shader, and mixed it in with a wireframe node to get the wireframe effect mixed in with the scanlines. Set up the mix as you wish. Next, I added a displace modifier, click new and the button beside it to create a new texture. Choose a texture of your choice, adjust the settings and the size until it looks good to you. You also need to pre-record a voice and keep it ready to import into our scene. Add a keyframe at the beginning and the end of the strength of the displace modifier. Go to the graph editor, press F3 and select sound to samples to bake your sound into the displacement strength. If the strength is not high enough, press F3 and type sample to keys to bake it into keyframes. Select the first and last few keyframes and click Ctrl I to invert your selection. Now press S and scale it up very high on the y-axis to increase the strength of your displacement. To play it, you can see that it distorts along with the voice that you have recorded. You can change the noise type and still continue creating different effects. The displace modifier will affect it. And this is how you can create some cool holograms for your scenes. Try out the effects I've shown and let me know how you like them. Subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Instagram for more videos every week.